Welcome to 1000 PS, welcome to beautiful Italy, welcome to the launch of Multistrada's new V4 S. Welcome to 1000 PS, welcome to beautiful Italy, welcome to the launch of Multistrada's new V4 S. Now, strangely, I've got my notepad in front of me, but before this launch, I didn't actually get a notepad ready because I was like, it's a new Multistrada for 2025, but not a lot has changed. It's just going to be one or two things. I'm going to be able to remember that dead easy. And then I went to the presentation last night and I'm scribbling away, and I've got more notes on top of notes on top of notes. So on face value, it doesn't look like a vast amount of difference. In actual fact, there's lots of little tweaks and little turns and little specification changes that have made the Multistrada into a different Multistrada for 2025. So let's stay with what has remained, and that's the V4 power. So 170 horsepower, good spread of power, good spread of torque, V4, now Euro 5 Plus, with revised fueling and revised exhaust. To be honest, I don't think anybody rode the Multistrada and said it needed more power, so that's why Ducati haven't changed it. What they have done is introduce the deactivation system on the back two cylinders. So roughly speaking, below 4,000 RPM, they don't have the back two cylinders running, just the front two. Request a lot of torque or above 4,000 RPM, and then the two cylinders come back into action. This saves on MPG, which obviously increases your tank range, and it also reduces the heat from the back two cylinders. We've seen this on the Diavol and we've seen this on the Multistrada Rally, both bikes I've ridden previously. Other changes, a lot of electronics changes. So they've got the new DVO system, which is from the Panigale, which is essentially, in a very simplistic way, is like having an extra brain to do all the calculations of the suspension, electronics and rider aids. The pivot point on the rear shock has gone up a little bit. Completely rear shock is completely new, revised front end with revised electronics. We've got an extra wet mode on top of the other modes that we've had previously. We've got slight changes cosmetically, and we've got multiple rider aids and multiple cornering systems. So with the new braking, it's combined. You have 3 ABS systems. You have ABS, just front only, nothing on the back. You've got ABS on the front, and the front activates the back and the back activates the front, depending on which mode and how you want to ride and how you want to do it. So essentially today here in Italy, we've had the day to ride around 200 kilometers, and we've had the day for about 20 kilometers of off-road, and we've been swapping in between bikes, some with the lightweight alloy wheels, some with the spoked wheels. Really interesting day. I mean, for me, it's quite advantageous that I've ridden lots of Multistradas before, I've ridden the Diavol before, I've ridden the Rally before, so I'm kind of used to the adaptive radar, cruise control, I'm used to the back cylinders cutting out below 4,000 RPM. There's a lot of familiarity for me, but it's nice that they've put everything into kind of one package with the new Multistrada. In terms of what it feels like when you're actually riding it, I think the biggest difference for me is in touring mode. So touring mode and sports mode previously were pretty similar, but now touring mode is very much that. It's a touring mode. It's much softer, it's much more compliant, it's much more manageable, it smooths out the road. The road here in Italy, sorry Mr. Italians, but it's terrible. It's full of undulation, cracked pavement, it's just shocking. It looks like 10-year-olds have been up there and just dug big holes away. But the Multistrada rides over it so well in touring mode, in that softer suspension. I think the pivot point, changing that, affects that quite somewhat. And then when you flick it into sports mode, you can feel the difference in the electronics, you can feel the difference in the power, you can feel the difference in the suspension. It still rides those bumps really well, but it's just more taut and more controllable. But the difference between sport and the difference between touring, I think, is now bigger. That gap has stretched. There's a definite difference between those two. In terms of the braking, it's interesting because when you apply the back, it applies the front. And for that reason, I think that's why Ducati have put a bigger disc and revised the whole rear brake caliper, because you're relying much more on the back brake. When you're in touring mode and you're taking it steady, it's quite nice to apply the back and it applies the front, and you can kind of be lazy and you don't really need to use the front brake when you're just taking it easy. But I don't think many people ride and buy a Multistrada to take it easy. What they want is a 170 horsepower touring bike. And when you flick into sports mode, for me, the back it doesn't feel natural, so I still prefer to use the front brake first and then the back brake. When you apply the front brake, it does apply the back brake, but not the other way around when you're in sports mode. So it's only touring mode that does the back to the front. But it's an interesting comparison when we do it and when we ride it. I think once you get used to it and once you get a little bit lazy, you're going to enjoy that feeling of just using the back brake and keeping your hands free. We had a little excursion off-road, interesting bike to ride off-road. I think in this category of adventure bikes, the Multistrada is probably not as strong as some of the other bikes off-road. Then you could throw the argument in, who's going to ride a £22,000 beautiful looking Multistrada through deep water and through ravines? The bars need to be a little bit higher. We can adjust them. We should have probably done that beforehand. And in enduro mode, the power is really soft, really usable. It's nice and easy going. And with the system that reduces the preload from the shock, which is like an auto lowering level, it means I can get 2 feet on the ground. It's really interesting for me because it feels like Ducati have just grabbed some bits from other bikes that have worked really well. So I guess the big question is going to be for the Multistrada is when we put it against the competition. I think off-road, it's going to possibly struggle against bikes like the Africa Twin and maybe the GS, but I don't think people are buying the Multistrada to go off-road like they do on some adventure bikes. I think people are buying the Multistrada because it's got 170 horsepower, it's desirable, it's exotic, it's good looking, and it's a brilliant road bike. But what Ducati have done for the next year, for 2025, is just made it even more compliant, even more comfortable, even more safety, and even more tech, and even more rider aids. But as we say, at 1000 PS, it'll be interesting when we get the bikes together. I think in terms of handling, in terms of comfort, this is probably up amongst it. In terms of jumping it through ravines, maybe towards the bottom. But it'll be interesting when we get the bike to a group test. If you've got any technical questions, don't forget to ask us. Me or one of the other members of the 1000 PS team will get answers, so just fire the questions below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks for watching, see you on the next one.